Welcome to this recording of the webinar Financial Wellbeing Support for NHS Professionals, brought to you by SBK Healthcare and presented by Sarah Murphy and Catherine Laycock of the Money and Pensions Service. To see further educational content, conferences, online courses and free webinars, please do visit our website www.sbk-healthcare.co.uk. Be guided by Sarah and Kath as they share with you how to access the right tools and support to alleviate the burden of money worries during this cost of living crisis. We hope you enjoy.
Very warm welcome. Thank you so much. I know how busy everybody is at the moment. This is being recorded in December, in case anybody's watching it at a later date. So I know how busy NHS staff are at the moment with all of the winter pressures. So really pleased to see how many people signed up and are joining us today. As Vanessa said, I'm Sarah Murphy with the very long job title. My role here at the Money and Pension Service really is to try to get financial well-being the same sort of prominence really as our physical and our mental well-being, because they're just so linked. And I'll be covering a little bit about that later on. And I'm delighted that my colleague Kath, one of our pension specialists, has been able to join us today as well. For those of you who don't know who we are, the Money and Pension Service is an arm's length body of the government. So we were set up through the Single Financial Guidance and Claims Act. So we're here to perform statutory functions. Some of those functions include debt advice commissioning in England, but we also provide a service for everybody across the UK, which we deliver under a brand called Money Helper. And that service provides information and guidance on absolutely everything from pocket money right through to pensions. And as I mentioned, we've got Kath today, who's one of our pension specialists who you might end up speaking to if you call that helpline. So the funding that we get comes mainly from levies on financial services firms, and what we provide is completely free, it's impartial, and it's obviously backed by government, and it's up to date. And I think that's important to stress when I come to some of the tools and resources that I'm going to talk about in a moment. So it is December 2022, and it's really impossible to open our newspapers, put the TV on, listen to the radio, look at our social media feeds without being aware that there is a cost of living crisis happening at the moment. We might also be seeing it ourselves in our bank accounts. So I'm sure we're all noticing that our costs are going up, our fuel prices, food, fuel in terms of car costs and travel costs as well. And so we're all really seeing our income squeezed in terms of these increasing costs. And for many of us, our wages might not be increasing at the same speed as we're seeing those outgoings increase. So we're all really feeling it at the moment. So it's no surprise that about 19 million people across the UK are feeling worried when they're thinking about their financial situation. So what Kath and I are going to cover today is a little bit about what financial well-being is. I mentioned that earlier, and how I think it's important that we think about it in line with our physical and our mental well-being. I'm also going to share some statistics which kind of paint a bit of a picture about how we might all be doing in relation to our financial well-being at the moment. But then importantly, we're going to share some tools, information and resources that we hope will be helpful, both for looking after your own financial well-being, but also if you're here because you want to support the financial well-being of your staff or your colleagues or of the people that you're supporting, so your patients or your service users. When you signed up to the webinar, you helpfully let us know what it was that you would like us to cover, and a number of you did ask about pensions, which is why we've also got Kath today who's going to deliver a session on the NHS pension and just to give some further information on your options about pensions. So first off, looking after your own financial well-being. So this is the definition that we at the Money and Pension Service have of financial well-being. So it's about feeling secure and in control. It's making the most of the money that you have, both day to day, but also being able to look ahead. And, you know, nobody has got a crystal ball. So it's about being able to withstand potentially any shocks that might come our way when we're talking about finances. And it's also about being on track for a healthy financial future. So when we do get to retirement age, after we've worked hard all of our lives, that we can retire hopefully comfortably. So in short, financially resilient, confident and empowered. And before I joined the Money and Pension Service, I worked for a number of years in the mental health sector. And I'm always surprised how many parallels there are really in terms of the definition of financial well-being and in terms of the definition of well-being more generally. Because certainly in the mental health world, I would talk a lot with clients who perhaps didn't feel like they had any control over their situation, and regaining that control was something that was really important to them. Also, if there are events that happen in our lives that can make us not feel great and make us feel actually very unwell, grief is one, if we're dealing with a bereavement, but a whole host of other life events can really knock us off course. So being able to have that resilience, being able to kind of dig into our toolkit and our experiences that shape us to be able to withstand those events and kind of manage to navigate through them is something that we would talk about a lot. And that feeling of empowerment, feeling that you've got the information, the knowledge, the resources that you need to be able to make informed decisions and feel empowered to be able to make those decisions and take hopefully some useful actions. And so as we go through today's presentation, I'm probably going to draw some parallels with financial well-being and certainly mental well-being as we go through. But what's happening at the moment? Well, the picture is looking a bit bleak, to be honest, in terms of financial well-being. So one of our functions at the Money and Pension Service is that we do a lot of research and insights gathering in relation to money. And every few years, we do a survey called the Adult Financial Wellbeing Survey, where we ask thousands of people various questions about how they're getting on with money. And the last time we ran that was 2021. So we were just kind of coming out of the pandemic. And we hadn't really got into the cost of living crisis yet. But at that point in 2021, 50%, so half of all adults, told us that they were struggling to keep up with bills and payments. It's a big survey, we don't run it every year, but I'm sure you can imagine that if we were to run it again this year, then that figure would probably have increased. There was also some research done earlier this year by the University of Edinburgh, quite an interesting survey where they actually used banking data to find out what was going on in relation to both public sector and obviously NHS staff included in that as well. And amongst other things in that report, what they found was that 54% of NHS staff had direct debits returned because there was insufficient funds. So that's a scary statistic, that over half of your NHS colleagues could well be struggling with money, and more money coming out, you know, or money trying to come out before perhaps that next paycheck is coming in. We also know from our Adult Financial Wellbeing Survey again that 52% of working age adults don't have a plan for retirement. But of course, I'm sure we all want to be able to get to that point, and hopefully money is the least of our worries and we can enjoy that retirement period. And I guess all of those taken together is showing us that there is an issue. Many of us are struggling financially. We're not necessarily always thinking ahead, but 81% of adults also say that they avoid talking about money. And that statistic has come from some polling that we did just earlier this year in sort of September time. So quite a recent statistic. So despite all of this kind of struggling, we're avoiding talking about it. And again, if we draw parallels with mental health, there was lots of campaigns a few years ago about, you know, it's okay to ask people how they are, and to genuinely ask them, and maybe ask twice to find out how they're doing, to really try to encourage people to talk about mental health and to try to normalise those conversations about mental health, and to show everybody that we all have mental health, and sometimes it might be that our mental health is worse at points than others. And I think actually the pandemic was a bit of a leveller on the mental health front, because it really showed us that we all were in this together, and that we were all experiencing and struggling at times together as well. And we came together to support each other. And I think it's the same with financial well-being, or perhaps actually financial well-being is a bit further behind than mental well-being, in that we're still quite embarrassed to talk about money. It still feels very shameful if someone is struggling with money. But if we can normalise those conversations about money, and you know, again, we're all going through this cost of living crisis together. So talking about it shouldn't be embarrassing. It shouldn't feel shameful to ask for help in relation to money, and because there is help out there, and that's what I want to talk about in terms of the tools and resources that are available to help with money issues. So a number of you, when you signed up, asked for tips today, and I'm not going to be able to give sort of personalised tips or guidance for everybody, but I did want to share what we would consider to be kind of 4 key actions that we would recommend that people take to be able to see the lay of the land for you, and hopefully take some positive actions in relation to improving your own financial well-being. So the first action that we would recommend is to sit down and do an income and expenditure sheet, or a budget sheet. Now that might feel like, oh, awful, and it might be not something that feels a bit uncomfortable to do, but it's a really useful activity to do, to just see the lay of the land, see where you're at, and to then be able to make some informed decisions about what to do next. And one of the resources that Emma will share with you after the webinar is our online budget planner tool that's available on our Money Helper service. And it's a good one because it covers all of the things that normally you forget about. I drive a very old car, and absolutely every year I forget that I've got to put it through its MOT. It's probably going to need something doing to it, which I've then got to pay for, and I forget about this expense every year. But the budget planning tool reminds you, it's got those prompts for all of the things that you might need to be spending money on across the course of the whole year. Your bank might be very helpful actually in relation to doing this, because more and more these days banks and banking apps have tools on there that let you see your breakdown of your income and your outgoings. Some of them even categorize it so you can see how much you're spending on groceries or on home kind of bills. So if you've got those tools within your banking apps and you feel confident using them, do use them. They can be really helpful, just again to let you see the lay of the land. And then once you've done that, if actually things are looking okay, great. It might be that you're looking to say, well, where might I be able to save a bit of money, or what do I want to do with any money that I've got left over? But as we said, we're all struggling with cost of living at the moment, and it might well be the case that when you do that budget sheet, you've perhaps got a bit more going out than is coming in, or you're only just sort of breaking even, and you're worried about what might happen if, you know, there was a sudden expense, like, you know, your boiler broke, or your washing machine broke down or something. In that situation, it's good to then say, okay, is there any way that I might be able to maximize my income? So can I increase my income somehow? That's obviously a lot of times easier said than done. If you are working, but perhaps you're working part-time, or you're on a low income, then there may well be welfare benefits that you're entitled to that you didn't know about. Or if you or someone in your household has an illness or disability, there could be benefits available to claim that you didn't know about. Again, we'll be sending you out a link, and on that, the link there I've said about reading our guidance. There are a number of tools that you can use they sometimes take about 20 minutes to go through, but you type in, it asks you questions about your circumstances, and it will tell you then whether or not it thinks that you might be eligible for certain benefits. And there are a number of those tools and we list them out on our Money Helper website there. The other thing to explore is that there are sometimes charitable grants and trusts that you can tap into, and particularly if you work in the healthcare sector, there are often charitable trusts set up specifically for certain professions. And those are trusts where they have a pot of money available and you can apply for funds for specific things. Sometimes it might be that they would be willing to help pay off some debts, or they might be willing to pay the fee for a bankruptcy, for example. Other cases, they're able to fund new beds or things that your children might need. So there's a whole range of different charitable trusts that are available potentially to tap into to pay for a range of different things. And again, on the link that we'll send out, there's a link to one of these grants checkers to see whether there might be anything you can tap into. Sometimes increasing income means about having some difficult conversations. So if, for example, you might have adult children that are living with you, are they contributing towards the household bills, or are they just paying you a bit of a peppercorn rent? So it might, that sometimes feels a bit awkward to ask family and your children to contribute a bit more. But when times are tough and you're trying to make the budget balance, it's one of those difficult conversations that sometimes you might have to broach. But there's a whole load of guidance on our website. Like I said, we'll send you the link out to explore different ways that you might be able to maximise your income. The next thing is to then look at all the things that are in your outgoings, and it might be that there are some things that you can cut back on. It might be that there are some subscriptions that you don't use. Do you go to the gym but you're still paying for it? Things like that are a bit easier to cut back on. But I appreciate that for some people, you might already be down to the bare minimum, and there's no luxuries coming out. In which case, it's a case of looking at, well, are there any ways of either reducing or getting help with some of those more essential bills? And again, on the Money Helper website, we've got a whole raft of information and guidance on different options for trying to reduce spend on those bills. One good tip is turning your boiler down to about 60 degrees, which doesn't impact on how hot your radiators will get, but it will reduce the amount of consumption, gas consumption that you use in terms of your boiler there. Other tips like that are available on the website as well. There's a whole host of schemes that have been set up by our different governments across the UK as well for help with energy costs. So do make sure that you're aware of what you're entitled to, and make sure that you are claiming that if it's something that you're eligible for. And then finally, if you have fallen into debt, so if you have actually missed some payments, particularly on things that we would class as a priority, which would be your rent or mortgage, your gas or electricity, your council tax or rates, depending on where you are in the UK. If you've fallen behind with one of those, or even if you've fallen behind with a credit card or a loan, then we'd really recommend that you do speak to a debt advisor. Debt advice can be given online, over the phone, or face-to-face, so you can tap into a method that works for you, and always make sure that whoever you go to for debt advice is giving it for free. There's no point paying somebody when you're already in debt. So free, independent. And again, on the Money Helper website, for all across the UK, you can type in your postcode or that of someone that you're working with, and it will bring up all of the free independent debt advice organisations that you might be able to access. And then I've mentioned Money Helper a few times now, so whatever the circumstances, we're on your side, and you can contact us either online or over the telephone, and the contact details will be coming out to you with the rest of the resources. But in terms of what Money Helper can offer, it really is just a raft of information from pocket money right through to pensions. So the information is available online. There's also some videos there which are really useful. There's a good one about talking to your creditors. We've got some really useful tools. There's a bill prioritizer tool which we've developed because of the cost of living, where you can select which bills that you're worried about, and it will come up then with tailored guidance to say, out of all the bills you've told us about, these are the ones that you should tackle first because they're more important. And then there's step-by-step guides for each of the different bills in terms of how you can approach it, extra financial support you might be entitled to for dealing with that particular bill, and also some tips for how you can actually go about talking to the creditor, the person that you might owe that money to. So if you're not sure where to turn, please do turn to Money Helper. There's a whole raft of information that can help you with your concerns. So I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Kath, who's going to talk us through how you will fund your retirement and a number of pension questions. So over to you, Kath.
Okay, thank you very much. So, you know, when Sarah's talking there about financial resilience and confidence and empowerment regarding money, I think pensions is an area where people really don't tend to feel confident, and they don't feel empowered at all. And we spend most of our lives getting statements and sort of opening them up sort of very briefly and then sticking them in a drawer and not really understanding what we've got. So today, just a very brief overview about pensions, and we will be doing a longer session on pensions in the new year as well. So look out for that if you want to learn more. So we tend not to think too much about how much income we're going to have in retirement or how much we'll need. We sort of walk blindly towards retirement without really planning for it often, or without really understanding how much we'll be receiving in retirement. And it is true to say that starting early and paying into pensions is ideal, because it's easier to pay a little bit into a pension over many years than to pay a lot in over a few years. On the other hand, it's never too late to start. And even saving a small amount of money can be a great help when you get to retirement. So you could use that money for a rainy day fund, to get some debts paid off, or as a bit of extra help to pay for life's luxuries. So taking a bit of time to think about that now, maybe a little bit of action now, will give you more security, more choices, and let's face it, probably more money when you get to retirement. So can I have a next slide, please? And when we think about, you know, how much money are we going to need for retirement, that's a little bit like asking how long is a piece of string. And 77% of people say they don't know. They don't know how much money they're going to need. And it is very much a personal choice, depending on whether you're going to be paying rent, for example, what type of lifestyle you're aiming for. So what I might think is a comfortable standard of living, someone else might think is living on the absolute basics. So one way of looking at it is thinking about your income and your bills now, thinking about how those are likely to change when you retire. That can be a really useful exercise. So when you're doing that budgeting, you can follow that up with looking at how is that going to change when I'm retired? Are we still going to need 2 cars in the household? Are we going to be spending more money on gas but less money on, you know, buying lunches out and that kind of thing, spending more money on travel, but we've got the mortgage paid off? So think about how things are going to change. And there's a link there at the bottom of the slide on a page on our website about the progress of your pension and retirement. And that just has like a little PDF sheet on there just to prompt you for those sorts of things. So that's something else that you could use as a tool. It's also useful to have an idea of what other people who are retired think that they need. So that way you can at least have an idea about what you're aiming for. And so research has been carried out to estimate what someone might need to live on during retirement. So a report was produced by the Retirement Living Standards by the Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association. And this research was originally conducted in 2018 and it was updated in 2021. And they worked with Loughborough University, and that was initially funded by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, to develop sort of a minimum income standard to see what's the minimum amount that you can realistically live on in retirement and still cover all those basic needs. And then they used focus groups to set the moderate and the comfortable standards. And so they're asking people who were already retired how much they had to live on and the lifestyle that amount gave them. Now, the figures that we've got here are the total gross income, and it doesn't cover anything like rent or mortgage or social care costs. And of course, as I say, they were updated last year. We're probably looking at a 10% increase on them now due to inflation. And that minimum lifestyle would cover all your basic needs. So a little bit of fun left over for fun and social occasions, maybe a holiday in the UK, eating out once a month, some kind of affordable leisure activities about twice a week. But if we look at more moderate income, a single person might need £20,000 to £25,000 of income in retirement, depending on where you live. And that would give you this moderate lifestyle, giving you a bit more financial security, a bit more flexibility. So giving you that foreign holiday once a year, eating out a few times a month perhaps, and having that opportunity to do more of the things that you want to do, a bit more of what you choose to do rather than what you can afford to do. And again, this resilience, this financial resilience, which we've seen over the past 3 years, is so important, really comes into these higher standards of living as well. And then we've got the comfortable standard there, and that's going to allow you a lifestyle that gives you more chance to be spontaneous with your money. So maybe having subscriptions to streaming services, regular beauty treatments, a couple of foreign holidays a year, a new car that's replaced every few years. So myself and Sarah can only aim for a new car every few years by the sounds of it, because I'm in the same boat with the MOT, hoping it's going to get through. So you can get further information about how these standards work, what people said about retirement and living standards and how far the money went. There's some really great quotes from people in that survey and that information. We've also got tools on the website. Sarah also already mentioned that budgeting tool, and then we've got that worksheet there as well. We've also got a pension calculator on that web page, so you can enter the details of your pensions to see how much you might have to live on when you retire. The other important thing when planning pensions is that people tend to underestimate how long they'll live. So you guys in the NHS are doing a great job keeping us all alive. And so a man aged 50 now has an average life expectancy of 84. And I don't think many people will be surprised by that. Yeah, 80 is reasonable. But what they often don't realise is that man also has a 1 in 10 chance of living to age 97. And for women, they have an average life expectancy of 87, usually a much lower pension amount, and a 1 in 10 chance of reaching 99. So there is a lot of retirement to plan for, and is your pension planning going to stretch that far? So if we go on to the next slide, we'll talk about some basics on the different types of pension. So a lot of people really struggle with the whole idea of pensions, don't realise there's different types, and that can get confusing when someone talks about what they've done with their pension or what they're going to do, and that doesn't seem to match up with what your statements are telling you. So firstly, the state pension. This is built up, an entitlement is built up through your national insurance contributions from your salary. And the full state pension now is worth £185.15 a week, which is £9,628 a year. So a good start for most of us for our retirement, but it can only be paid from your state pension age. You can't take it earlier. So that's going to be 66, 67 or 68, depending on your date of birth. And as it says in the blue box, the state pension is paid in addition to your NHS and any other pensions. So you're building up both at the same time. Some people are confused, am I going to get a state pension because I'm paying into the private one? Yeah, you'll get both. And the state pension isn't means tested, so you get that regardless of your savings and any other income, as long as you've built up that entitlement throughout your working life. And then all other pensions are private pensions, and that includes personal pensions and workplace pensions. Defined contribution or DC pensions are the type where you've got a pot of money that's invested. So personal pensions are this type, and pretty much anybody working in the private sector will be paying into a defined contribution scheme as well. With this type, you have lots of flexibility about how to take those retirement benefits, but you don't know in advance how much you'll end up receiving. So it's going to depend on the investment returns and so on. So lots of flexibility, but not so much in the way of guarantees. Now, defined benefit pensions like the NHS scheme give you the promise of a defined benefit or income in retirement. These aren't quite as flexible as DC pensions in as far as your options, but you do know in advance what you'll get And that pot is never going to run out, and you'll get that pension paid for the rest of your life. So a lot more guarantees and securities in the defined benefit type of pension scheme. So could I have the next slide, please, and look at the advantages of the NHS scheme. So first and foremost, free money. That has to be a big advantage in anyone's book. And you get tax relief on your pension contributions. And that's important to understand because it means that paying into the scheme might not be quite as expensive as you think, which is important to everybody at the moment. So the example here in pink is showing someone paying a 7.7% contribution, which is costing £167 a month. So if you look at your pay slip, that's what it'll probably show you. If you do the calculations, 7.7% of your monthly salary, it'll come up as £167. However, if that money wasn't going into your pension, you'd be paying tax on it. So you'd only actually get £133.60 in your bank account. As it's going into the pension, that full amount is going towards that future income. So really, instead of that 7.7%, you're only paying more like 6.2% into the pension as far as the actual cost to you. And then on top of that, your employer and the government are putting an extra 20.6% of your salary into the pension as well to pay for those benefits. So that's an extra fifth on top of your wage that you're getting in the form of future pension benefits. So it's a bit like a deferred salary, really. We're not paying this now, but we'll pay you this in the future. And of course, if you opt out of the scheme, you don't get that tax relief, or you don't get that extra employer money either. Now, we certainly hope that you'll get to reap the rewards of your pension for many years of retirement, but if not, there are death benefits payable to your loved ones as well. So if you die while you're still paying into the scheme, there's a lump sum that's worth 2 times your annual salary, and that's usually paid tax-free to your beneficiary. And there are also other lump sums and survivors' pensions payable, depending upon your circumstances. And you should really tell the scheme who you'd like to receive those. So tell the NHS pension scheme, if you've got a partner that you're not married to, tell them who you would like to receive any lump sum death benefits. Now, although the NHS scheme isn't as flexible as a defined contribution pot, you do have choices about when you take the pension and taking some of it as a tax-free cash lump sum. And that can be useful when you retire. It could give you a holiday, it could get the mortgage paid off, it could be a rainy day fund, but you might prefer to have the higher monthly guaranteed income and little or no tax-free cash as well. So the choice is yours. I've mentioned there the minimum pension age. For some of you, it will be 50. For most of us, it will be 55 at the moment, and that's rising to 57 from April 2028. So if we could go on to the next slide and just have a little bit of a look. It's a really brief overview of how the NHS pension scheme works. So as you've seen recently, the amount that you pay into the scheme can vary over time, but this is a bit like an insurance premium, and it guarantees those future benefits. There isn't a direct relationship to how much you're paying in to what you're going to get out. Every year that you're a member of the 2015 scheme, you're building up a block of pension that's equivalent to 1/54th of your earnings in that year. So you do that in year 1, and then in year 2, you build up another block of pension, and that first block is revalued with inflation. So year on year, you're building up more and more blocks, with the older ones increasing with inflation as you go, and you're building up a bigger pension for when you retire, the longer that you pay into the scheme. And then at retirement, all these blocks from the 2015 scheme are added together with any of your final salary pension from the 1995 or 2008 sections in order to form one pension. And as I mentioned before, you can choose when to take that pension, and you can even decide to take some of your benefits and continue to work. If you take a pension earlier than the normal retirement age on the scheme, so that would be 60, 65 or your state pension age, you get less per year because the pension's going to pay out for longer. But in any case, your pension from the NHS is guaranteed to pay out for the rest of your life, just like the state pension is. And if you die leaving a qualifying partner, they will get a pension for the rest of their life too. So just a next slide, please, and we'll just have a quick look at some next steps. What can you do now to try and understand your pension and understand what you can do in the future? So taking that time to understand it and your options might help you plan for the future. And one of those is actually to pay more into the NHS scheme if you're able to do that. And that will help you build up more pension, and you'll find more information about that on the scheme website, or you can discuss it with us at Money Helper. Now, I don't have the time today to go through all the options for your NHS pension or to explain everything you need to know, but there are some links on this slide to help as well. So tracing the previous pensions that you have from previous employers or from when you've paid into a personal plan perhaps, that's a good idea. So you know what you already have. And it's the same with the state pension. You can check online or ring the pension service to ask how much you're on track to get. And if you don't understand what those statements are telling you, give us a call and we can talk through what those numbers mean. As you look into those existing pensions, make sure that those nominations for death benefits are up to date for the NHS scheme and for any others. There's a link there on the slide to the NHS nominations. And once you know what you have, then budgeting tools and planners like the ones here from our website can help you work out if that's going to be enough for you. Now, any questions that are specifically about your benefits, such as how much you need, will need to be addressed to the pension scheme administrators. So, you know, how much have you got in your pension pot? How much are you going to receive when you come to retirement? You'll need to speak to the pension scheme administrators, but we can speak to you at Money Helper about all sorts of general questions. And as I said, we'll be doing a full presentation in March on pensions as well to give you some further information. So I'll hand back to Sarah now to discuss more on how you can help other people, perhaps.
Thanks, Kath. I always learn a lot when we get the chance to work together. So I want to just spend the last few minutes talking about how you might be able to look after the financial well-being of the people you support. And I know when you signed up, some of you were asking about colleagues or people that you line manage, and others were asking about your patients or service users, the people that you support. And when I was thinking about this, although I appreciate it's different audiences, actually the things that I would suggest are the same. So I've sort of put them all together. So just why is it important, I guess, in the first instance, is that from my experience, there is this kind of vicious cycle really of money problems and health problems. If you're struggling with money, it can mean that you can't afford to put the heating on, which can exacerbate respiratory illnesses and make health problems worse. Can mean that people can't afford nutritious food, and that can sometimes lead to either obesity or malnutrition in some cases. And dealing with a money problem is stressful, and that ongoing stress can exacerbate or in some cases cause mental health problems. But equally, if someone's living with a health problem, then it might mean that earning money is more difficult, or their income may fluctuate if someone is in and out of work, and that can make managing money more difficult and tip someone into a money problem. And sometimes some symptoms of health problems can actually make making decisions about money more difficult. So mental health problems is a clear example of that. So from your patients or service users perspective, being able to support with a money issue should then also be able to help with that kind of health problem potentially. And we've been doing a lot of work here at the Money and Pension Service just to think about health inequalities, because a lot of those come from deprivation, which ultimately spans from money issues, low income, poverty, etc. But from an employer-employee perspective, you know, if someone is worrying about money, that's pretty stressful. It might be that they're turning up to work and there's that presenteeism in place, so they're there, but their mind isn't fully on the job because they're so worried about their financial situation, or that they end up being off work. Some people might not be able to afford to get to work, others might become so stressed and unwell that they're off work. So you're looking at an absenteeism situation. So whether it's patients and service users or employees, we think it's really important to consider money when you're looking at that person in the round. So just some tools and resources that we hope will be able to help you do that. So first off, here at the Money and Pension Service, we've worked with the Office of Health Improvement and Disparities to create a short e-learning module on financial wellbeing. Now, I appreciate there's colleagues beaming in from Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. Some of the information on this e-learning module is related to England in terms of some of the statistics and some of the focus that's taking place within NHS England at the moment. But the rest of it is still got really useful tips and resources that we think that will work for you as well. It only takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete. What we're not suggesting in this e-learning is that all of you suddenly become money advisors. To be able to provide money advice, you have to be regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, you have to be insured, you have to be supervised and trained. So for all of those reasons, we wouldn't suggest that you suddenly try to give any money advice, but also you're busy enough as it is, and you're trained within your clinical discipline. So, you know, there isn't the time to be able to start also providing any kind of money advice. But what we are suggesting is that if you can ask the question and see whether or not there are any money issues, offer to assist, and then act by perhaps signposting or referring somebody into money support, then that would be going a huge distance to help people. And the same way with the employer-employee relationship, again, going back to the mental health parallels, you know, we're all encouraged to ask, you know, how are you? And if there's anything that's worrying you, it might be that a financial situation is worrying you. But again, as a manager or as a colleague, you're not trained to actually give any money advice. So following the same sort of premise really about asking, offering to assist, and then signposting that person to a relevant source of support. And as I mentioned, asking questions about money is awkward, so we've put some suggested kind of conversation starters in the e-learning. If you do ask and you offer to assist and someone says, yes, I would like some help, where do you signpost them? And it might be that you've already got excellent pathways through into different money advice services, either you know, in your geographic area, or it might be that your clinical pathway has some clear links in. And just to give one example, I'm aware that the cancer pathway, there's strong links in with Macmillan's financial support line as an example. But if where you are or the area that you work in, you don't have those referral links, or you're just not sure where to send somebody, please send them to Money Helper. It's free, it's impartial, it's kept up to date, and it, like I said, it covers a whole range of money topics, and there will be information that's available there to help somebody. And then finally, this is a toolkit that we worked on with a mental health charity who run a service called Mental Health and Money Advice. And they developed this mental health and money toolkit because people told them that they really needed this pincer approach. They needed support to deal with their feelings of guilt and shame and embarrassment at having a money problem before that they felt empowered and able to take any action to deal with the money problem. So they developed this toolkit to deal with both issues. So half of the toolkit contains a range of cognitive behavioural therapy techniques that the person can work through on their own to build that self-esteem and to try to get over that avoidance cycle. And then the other half of the toolkit talks through some basic money guidance. It talks through how to prepare for a welfare benefits appointment if someone's having to claim benefits for the first time. And it also explains the different options for debt advice. So the toolkit is available as a digital version on the website link there. But at the Money and Pension Service, we've also supported the charity by printing and distributing some hard copies of the guides. So if you would like some of those, please do email us, let us know how many you would like. It's a minimum order of 20, but no maximum order. We have a lot of them in stock, and just let us know where you would like us to send them. They're available in England, Scotland, Wales, and we also have a Welsh language version. The charity have just finalised the Northern Irish version, so that will be available online early next year, and we're just liaising with them about the print and the distribution of that. So if you're dialing in from Northern Ireland, please watch this space. The toolkit will be available for you early next year. And I think that's everything from us. Very happy to take any questions.
Hello, hi. Thank you for such an interesting presentation. Disappeared. I have got some questions. Kath has been very kind and started answering a few of them. So I'm going to jump in on the ones that you're not typing on, Kath.
Okay.
So an anonymous, and please do bear in mind, attendees, that though our speakers will do the best they can to answer your questions, they obviously can't give you direct financial advice. So there are a couple of judgment calls in your questions, so I just want to make that really clear. So an attendee has asked that, well, they say, will 18 years in the NHS give me a full NHS pension?
Yeah, that there isn't something that we could really say now that would be a full NHS pension. 18 years will give you more than 17 years worth and less than 19 years worth. And so it's not going to be a full amount, but there is no such thing really as a full amount now. So there isn't a limit on how much you can pay into the NHS scheme at the moment. And so, yeah, the more years you're in the scheme, the more you're building up. As I mentioned, in the 2015 scheme now, you're building up a block of pension each year that you're in there. And there's an example on the slide. So the longer you pay in, the more pension you're going to have at retirement, really. The one that I was just answering, I don't know if you want to come back on that one, just let me know. But thinking of leaving the NHS, how would that affect my pension? Should it be a reason I don't leave? So what I was just saying is, there are many reasons why we choose careers and leave employers and so on. But it is important to understand how valuable the NHS scheme is. And, because we don't understand pensions, we don't understand how valuable those pensions are. Many years ago, I worked for the civil service and I didn't realise how valuable that pension was until I left there and started working in pensions. So we don't take it into account when making those decisions. So I can't tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but do take it into account. As I said, with the NHS scheme, 2 parts to it really. You're getting that guaranteed pension for life, which is like hen's teeth outside the public sector now. You're getting that defined benefit pension, but also you're getting an employer contribution into that of 20.6%. Now, just to let you know that the minimum standard in line with the government's automatic enrolment regulations is 3% of your wage, and that doesn't even have to be your whole wage. So a lot of employers out there will be paying a 3% contribution as opposed to your 20.6% from your employer. So it might be that if you're getting double the salary, you might think that's a good deal and that's great, but just do keep it in mind.
Thanks, Kath. So following on from that sort of question, Kat has asked, can you ask your new employer, I'm assuming outside of the NHS, to pay into your NHS pension?
Only employees that are eligible for the NHS pension scheme can pay into the NHS pension scheme. So your employer will either be eligible to join that or they won't. So, for example, I couldn't ask to join the NHS pension scheme. I'm just not eligible for it. So yeah, you're entitled to the pension scheme that your employer is offering.
Yes, I feel like I'd be running there too as well. Helena asks, I have an NHS pension in England, which I stopped contributing to in 2011 when I moved to Northern Ireland. And she now works in Irish Healthcare Trust. Mm-hmm. I now contribute to the NI pension. I will be 60 next year and plan to take out my English pension. Will that affect me continuing to work and pay pension in Northern Ireland?
Good question. I'm not entirely sure about that, actually. I would say that's something that you should check with your current employer and current pension scheme. Certainly, within England and Wales, or within Scotland, or within Northern Ireland, then there are rules about taking your pension and continuing to work, and or taking parts of your pension and continuing to pay in. How that works cross-border, I'm not sure, I'm afraid. So you need to speak to the your employer and the pension scheme administrators about that.
Okay. And then Hannah's asked if we're gonna have access to your slides. Yes, I can answer that one. We will be sending them out in the week following today's webinar, so you'll have access to all of those. Sarah and Kath have really kindly offered to share any resources that they've used and also signpost you to appropriate services. So someone's asked, does the 20.6% include the 9% that we pay?
No, your contribution is on top of that. So the 20.6 is what your employer and the government are paying. So you pay an amount on top of that. And as I said in the presentation, be aware that, you know, if the headline rate is 9%, you'll actually be paying less than that depending on your tax rate. So the actual cost to you in real terms, i.e. if I opted out of the scheme, how much better off would I be, will be less than that 9%. But the 20.6% is the employer and the government paying into it. And the employer and the government are also guaranteeing your pension for the future. So you put your money in now, you've done your bit. It's like you've paid your insurance premium. If there isn't enough money, you know, but from that 20.6%, then the government and the employer will, you know, pay more in the future. That's a key advantage, and that's why the public sector have moved away from this. It's such a big risk to say, you know, we're going to pay a pension for someone who left us 30 years ago. We don't know how long they'll live. We don't know what inflation's going to do. It's a massive, massive risk. So that's why you only really get them in the public sector now.
So Jennifer asks, is the Money Helper able to provide individual advice for those who call?
We can provide tailored guidance. We can't give financial advice, so we're not regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. So the difference there, whether it's pensions or whether it's on loans, debts or anything else, what we can tell you is information. We can signpost you to help. We can explain things. We can give you the options about what you could do. What we can't do is say what you should do. So I don't know all your individual circumstances. If you spoke to a financial advisor, they would spend an awful lot of time going through your personal finances in details, finding out about your family, you know, inheritances, and whether you own a property and all sorts of things. And we don't do that, and we're not there to do that. We're there to provide impartial, free guidance. And some people might then go on to take regulated financial advice, but at least if you speak to us first, hopefully you have a little bit more of an idea of, you know, the questions to ask and the sort of options going into that.
So would you like to add anything additionally?
No, I think Kath's covered it. Yeah, as is very clearly evident, Kath's one of our pension specialists, so she can provide that guidance on pensions. But we also have a team that provide the money guidance on that full range of topics that I mentioned earlier. So if someone called up, I wasn't sure about kind of the different energy support schemes that might be available to them, they would be able to provide information on all of that kind of cost of living support. But like Kath said, they can't say, and then you should definitely do this. They'll give information about the full range based on the questions and, you know, that you ask them. So tailored guidance, like Kath said, rather than tailored advice. And that might sound pedantic, but that for us, that's quite important, the difference between advice and guidance, because of that regulatory issue. We can't stray into giving advice, but it is one-on-one conversation and tailored information based on the conversation that you have with the guys on the helpline.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. So I've got a question. Is local government pension the same as the NHS pension? Same scheme?
So it works in a very similar way. So it's a different scheme. It has slightly different rules, but they work in very much the same way. And you can potentially transfer one into another. They both provide that guaranteed income for life. So slightly different rules about how quickly it builds up and how much you pay in and that kind of thing, but they work in very much the same way.
So we've got another question. It says, if I have a very short stint of work with a non-NHS employer and have paid into a pension scheme with them, is it worth combining this with my NHS pension? I've only been working with the NHS for a few years so far.
So you can only transfer other benefits into the NHS scheme within the first year of being entitled to join the NHS scheme. So if you've been working for the NHS for a few years now, you won't be able to do that. So you will have probably a small pot of defined contribution pension. So maybe it's worth £500, £1,000 or something like that. That will sit there, will remain invested until either you get to retirement age, or if you did have another pension scheme, either a personal one or with a different employer that's this defined contribution type, you could combine them together at that point. But normally you wouldn't be able to access it until at least age 55, and you won't be able to transfer into the NHS scheme.
Thank you. And then this last question is, can I have both an NHS and a private pension? Is there a max limit in both?
Yes, you can have both. And there is a maximum of how much you can pay into a scheme, and there is a maximum of how much you can build up tax efficiently in pensions across the board. So you can build up over £1 million worth of pensions over the course of your lifetime. So for most of the population, that's really not an issue. You can also pay sort of the equivalent of £40,000 a year into a pension each year, and that is your contributions and your employer's contributions and the tax relief all added together for a defined contribution scheme, or it's the amount of increase in your defined benefit pension from last year to this year. And there's a calculation there. So for most of us, these sort of figures don't really come into it. Most of us, we can pay as much as we can afford into a pension scheme. We can have as many different pension schemes as we can. But there is an issue within the NHS with the higher paid members of staff, obviously the consultants and so on, who do come up against these limits, and that's a conversation we can have on the helpline if you want information about that. But it's also something you can discuss, of course, with a financial advisor. But for most of us, it's not an issue.
So a couple more have snuck in. It's going to have to be quite quick. We've only got a few minutes left now. Do you need to work for the NHS for a certain amount of time before qualifying for a pension?
So you'll be joining the pension scheme straight away. After you will have to work for them for 2 years to keep an entitlement to the pension that you built up. So if you joined and left 6 months later, you don't keep an entitlement to that pension, and you will be offered either a refund of what you've paid in or a transfer of the benefits into another scheme, which realistically would need to be another public sector scheme to accept that transfer probably. But yeah, so you need to avoid those 2 years to keep that entitlement.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one is, I moved from England to Scotland last year and moved my pension over. Things are not looking promising, and I'm thinking of leaving Scotland now. Is that going to be a problem if I move away from Scotland?
No, so if you leave the NHS, then you will keep that entitlement to benefit as long as you've got those 2 years in. And if you move back to England and Wales NHS, then you could transfer the benefits back and combine them again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering these questions. It was a brilliant presentation from both of you, and I'm so pleased that you were able to share some of your time with us today. It has been mentioned you will be coming back in March, which I'm thrilled about, to deliver another session with us. But I just wanted to thank you on behalf of our attendees today for what has been a brilliant webinar.